The city of Ogden, Marsh, Iowa is completely empty as fire consumes every place in the darkness of night. This began 2 days ago. The inhabitants are watching a high school baseball game, which is interrupted when they see Rory walking across the field with a rifle in his arms and a sinister look. Deputy Russell clears the field while Sheriff David approaches Rory and, thinking he's drunk, tries to get him to calmly put down the weapon. Rory, barely coherent, was about to shoot, but David shoots Rory first, ending his life. He goes to Rory's house at night and asks forgiveness from Peggy, his wife, and Kurt, his son, saying that Rory was intoxicated and that he had no other choice. However, Peggy doesn't accept his apology and slaps him weakly, stating that Rory hadn't drunk in a long time. David feels guilty and can't sleep, but Judy, his pregnant wife, assures him that he acted correctly. The next day, David receives a call from the laboratory and discovers, shocked, that Rory's blood tests showed no alcohol even after being repeated. David is disturbed and goes to the field, where he sees Ben, the school principal, sitting and lost in his thoughts. Similar to Rory, David has to call his name several times to make him react and talk a little. At the hospital, Deirdre accompanies her husband Bill to a consultation with Dr. Judy. Bill insists that he's just sleepy and that nothing's seriously wrong, but he seems somewhat confused. When Judy asks him another question, he just repeats the same thing. At night, Deirdre hears a noise in the garage and goes to see what it is, finding the tractor running but Bill nowhere in sight. She turns off the tractor and hears her son scream, then runs back to the house to find him. She becomes distressed upon seeing his empty room, but the boy appears and asks her to be quiet. They hide in the closet when the boy says that Bill has a knife. Hey! The movie I'm summarizing is called The Crazies. This is a different kind of zombie movie. Those affected by this epidemic go crazy. It's a really good horror movie mixed with science fiction. I invite you to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell to receive the best summaries. Soon after, they hear Bill coming up the stairs, so they try to stay quiet. But unfortunately, Bill finds them anyway and locks the door immediately. Ignoring his family's screams, Bill spreads gasoline throughout the house and sets it on fire. When the police and firefighters arrive at the scene, there's nothing left to do. Deirdre and the boy are dead. Bill seems to be just tending to the garden while his house burns, and when Judy, furious, confronts him about what he did, Bill just whistles. Later, he's taken to the police station to await transfer, and he stays there, motionless in his cell with a sinister look. Nearby, 3 hunters are heading to the swamp when they come across a parachute tangled in some trees. When they pull the end from the water, they are startled to find the corpse of an army pilot. As soon as the police arrive to investigate, Russell recalls a rumor he heard about a plane that crashed in the swamp, which at the time seemed absurd to him, as it would be too big for no one to notice. David and Russell decide to take a boat to the marsh and are surprised to find a sunken plane. In the air, a type of flying camera aims at the city with the message "Initiate Containment Protocol." With a hypothesis in mind, David tries to find out where the city's water comes from and verifies that it comes from that marsh, reaching Rory's house first. A military plane crashing into a river with no news coverage is very strange, so David suspects that the plane is polluting the water and making people sick. David and Russell go to the mayor to request that he cut off the water, but the mayor refuses because it would ruin the crops and lead the city to ruin. Fearing for his family's life, David decides to disobey orders and goes to cut off the water himself, even ripping out the valve to prevent anyone from turning it back on. When they return to the police station, they are startled to see Bill bloody on the cell floor. They think he's dead, but when they approach, Bill wakes up and tries to bite them like a zombie. David notices that Bill should have been taken away already, but when he tries to talk to his superiors, he discovers that the phones aren't working and there's no internet connection. David leaves home and sees that there's no one in the city, just a woman riding a bicycle. Suddenly, a suspicious black car photographs him but flees when David runs after it. David enters the autopsy room and sees that the first corpse he finds has its eyes and mouth sewn shut. He hears a sound from another gurney and sees that the dead person is breathing and also has their face sewn up. David tries to open the stitches and the man says, "Behind you." Behind you! Suddenly the coroner attacks David from behind. I confess this part scared me. The coroner seems to be sick too, and they fight while he tries to stab David with a medical sander, hurting his shoulder. David grabs the cord and makes the saw hit the coroner instead of him, ending his life. However, the cutter bounces across the floor and heads toward David, who is rescued by Russell at the last moment. Then David returns home and asks his wife to go to her parents' house, but Judy refuses, saying that the city needs a doctor in emergency cases. Only movie doctors would do that. Suddenly, Judy notices someone outside their house and David goes to check the barn, but is captured by the army. They throw him into a bus where he sees many kidnapped inhabitants, including Judy and Russell. The bus takes them to a military field they've set up at the local school, where people are kept behind bars. The group goes through some tents to be examined for radiation and body temperature, and all those with bad results are separated from their families, even if they're just children. Judy has a high fever, and the soldiers drag her away, making David angry and fight with the army. But he is quickly subdued and knocked out. Judy is strapped to a gurney and taken inside, where she observes many masked soldiers, suffering people, and bloodstains. She screams when they try to anesthetize her. When she wakes up, she's in a room with dozens of people strapped to gurneys and hears brutal sounds from outside. Apparently, a car has crashed into the field's gates, and people are using the chance to escape. While soldiers try to stop them, a fierce rebellion breaks out and infected people invade the isolation sector. Unable to handle the chaos, the doctors and soldiers flee in aircraft, abandoning the sick people strapped to the beds. David wakes up in a vehicle that transported him to a new base, where everyone receives a bracelet indicating they're free from infection. It seems the immune people will be taken somewhere else, but David won't leave without Judy. A resident tells that the city has been surrounded and that the barriers on the roads killed several families who tried to escape, but David accuses him of being cowardly. Soon after, David returns to the police station and sees Bill dead on the ground. When he hears a sound, he grabs his gun and aims, but it's just Russell. They hide quickly when they see the black car outside, and David explains that Judy has a fever because she's pregnant, so Russell agrees to help save her. Back to Judy, she sees that her friend Becca is on a bed next to her. A strange noise and a shadow interrupt their conversation and reveal Ben, who is covered in blood and holding a garden fork. He's infected and walks through the room, mercilessly stabbing patients who show any reaction. He gets close to Becca, but Judy screams to get his attention. Later, Ben goes after her and raises the rake, but David and Russell shoot him. They get Judy and Becca out of there and find a scene of horror due to the rebellion. Soon after, the group moves through the city, seeing everything ruined and on fire. They also observe a crazy person beating a car, but luckily they aren't seen. While looking for a working car to get out of the area, they hear a sudden noise and take shelter behind a truck. It's the hunters who are hunting people and shooting them before putting the bodies in the back of their truck. Fortunately, they leave soon and the group can continue. After not finding any decent car, as they all have flat tires, David says there's an old police car at his house, so they decide to take a shortcut to get there. The group arrives at Becca's boyfriend's house, so she runs to look for him. Scotty points a gun at them, thinking they're infected. But when David aims his gun at him, Scotty apologizes and says he just wanted to make sure. He says his mother is safe and collecting supplies, but they stop talking when they notice people arriving. They take shelter in the barn and see a group of soldiers surrounding the house and taking the old lady to experiment on her. Scotty can't stand to see this, and against David's advice, runs out to save his mother, but the soldiers shoot them and burn the bodies with a flamethrower. The soldiers are instructed to search the place, and one of them enters the barn, but David and Russell quickly grab him and drag him behind at gunpoint. The very young soldier explains that he's also in the dark about what's happening. The platoon just followed orders. He didn't join the army to kill civilians and promises that if they let him go, he won't turn them in. David lets him go, and the soldier tells the others that the place is empty and that they should leave. The next day, the group arrives at David's house. Russell busies himself fixing the police car while the others get what they need, and Judy goes to the baby's room to say goodbye, not seeing Peggy, who is infected, behind her. Downstairs, David hears a noise and goes to the nursery, where he finds Judy tied to a chair. Kurt, who is infected, attacks David to kill him, and when David tries to grab his gun from the floor, Peggy wounds his hand, pinning it to the floor. She takes the gun and aims at Judy, so David distracts her by saying he was responsible for her husband's death. David is attacked by Peggy, who points the gun at him. but he takes it from her and uses his free hand to push Kurt away and shoot Peggy, taking her life. Kurt then grabs the gun and almost hits David, but Russell shoots Kurt through the window. David then frees Judy, who was tied up, and Russell comes in to put more bullets in the dead bodies for safety. Judy is frightened by this and fears that he might be sick too, but David says they should thank him. They get in the car and continue their journey, but soon Becca starts coughing. Russell suspects she's sick and soon everyone starts fighting. Suddenly they see a helicopter in the sky and David decides to hide in a car wash. They stay inside waiting for the helicopter to pass, but Becca spots someone outside and soon the platform moves when the wash begins. David wants to escape, but the car is blocked by the structure. Soon a group of contaminated employees surrounds the vehicle and attacks the group, shattering the windows to get in. While David fights one of them, another tries to grab Becca, so she smashes his head against the car and throws him out. After much effort, David also manages to get the other guy out and finally gets the car moving. However, another employee appears in the back of the car and wraps a hose around Becca's neck, who is pulled out and killed. David stops the car and he and Russell eliminate the crazy employees, while Judy goes to Becca, but there's no hope left. As if that wasn't enough, the helicopter passes over them and explodes the car. Then, the three survivors continue down the road and end up finding Russell's truck, which was damaged by spikes. At that moment, they spot the mysterious black car approaching, and David decides they should take it. But Russell acts excessively and shoots the spikes onto the road, making the car flip. David prevents Russell from shooting the agent who got out of the car and wants to know what's happening. The agent reveals that the plane was carrying an experimental biological weapon that could cause chaos in a population, but the plane crashed on its way to Texas, where it would be eliminated. The weapon has an incubation time of 48 hours. David becomes furious and punches the agent, but Russell shoots the agent and kills him. David realizes his friend is infected. Russell has a rifle that David takes for safety, but Russell shows that he has another gun and threatens them, demanding they return the rifle and saying how much he has already helped them. Then Russell orders the couple to walk, acting as if they were his prisoners. They walk a bit, and Russell shoots all the rifle bullets into the air and David tries to calm him down. David takes advantage when Russell lowers the gun and punches him and takes the gun, and looking at the sky, Russell confesses that he's not well. He asks to stay with them a little longer, just to not feel alone at the end. Soon after, the group comes across the road to the highway closed by the army. Russell offers to delay the soldiers, and David gives him the gun. Russell runs out to get their attention, but is killed before he can shoot. Even so, he manages to give David and Judy time to escape and leave the city. After a while, they find a truck stop and are shocked to see 3 trucks full of corpses that should have been carrying healthy people out. The bullet casings show that the government planned to kill everyone from the start. Luckily, they find a normal truck, and David starts gathering supplies to escape. He finds a military radio and hears a message announcing that something big will happen in 10 minutes. He heads to the garage and sees the hunter's truck full of corpses, indicating they're nearby. Suddenly, the building's light goes out. Judy notices a shadow and hides quickly, grabbing a knife. But the hunters find her anyway, and she runs away and takes refuge in a room where there are more dead bodies. When a hunter enters this room, Judy controls herself and blends in with the corpses, making the hunter not notice her and leave. Judy heads to the door and almost screams when someone touches her, but luckily, it's just David. They run to the truck, and upon opening the door, a corpse falls out. They get in the car, but the keys David had taken from the office don't work, so he has to search the dead body for another key. He finds it, but is soon grabbed by a hunter who drags him out and starts fighting. Another hunter tries to invade the truck, but Judy shoots him without hesitation. David fights with the hunter, throws oil on him, and lights it with his lighter, moving away to escape the fire. Then the couple flees in the truck, and since David took the army radio with him, they hear a countdown that ends at 0. Soon after, they hear an explosion, and when a very intense light illuminates everything around, they realize that the army has detonated their city. The bomb releases such a powerful shockwave that it hits the truck and throws it off the road. Luckily, they both survive, so they hug while watching their hometown collapse. Then the couple heads to the nearest city, not knowing that the drone camera is above them and shows the words "Initiate Containment Protocol." At the same time, news outlets across the country report that the city was consumed by a common fire that wasn't contained due to the wind, and that the explosion some people witnessed was an accident at a chemical plant. At the location, an infected person suddenly interrupts the broadcast. And so, the movie ends, suggesting that the epidemic has spread. So that's it. Comment what you thought of the movie. Don't forget to leave a like to keep bringing summaries to you. So until the next recap,